Hi everyone! I'm really excited to introduce Dr. Shane Cassidy. We will be interviewing him today as part of the Music Therapy Academy. Hi Shane!
Hi, Bernice.
And before we begin, I just wanted to read a little bit about Dr. Shane Cassidy. He is the founder of Neurolinks. He is an accredited and experienced music therapist registered with ICAT based in Ireland. He is also a member of the International Academy for Neurologic Music Therapy. His clinical expertise lies primarily in neurological conditions and mental health, and he has also been heavily active in research field over the past 5 years. We're really excited to have you with us today, Shane.
Thank you for
I
having
am.
me. Yeah, really looking forward to this.
And we have a few questions lined up that I think our community would really want to hear about from you. So we'll start off
Amazing.
with what inspired you to become a music therapist?
Ooh, a nice easy one to start, Bernice. Yeah,
Yeah, a big question.
yeah, absolutely. So I suppose I'll start at the beginning. Best
Yes.
place as any. I suppose growing up, music was always just such a big part of my life, and from a very young age, was playing piano. I took up the clarinet then at about age 10, I think it was. So I suppose music was always really ingrained in my upbringing, and I guess then hitting the awkward teenage years, I really used music myself as a kind of a tool, I guess, and used it for my own kind of well-being and as a kind of self-care tool. Um, and I suppose from a very young age, I always wanted to pursue music in terms of a career. And I suppose back then I was going down the performance avenue with the clarinet. And coming through my music degree, reaching the end of my music degree, and I did that here in Ireland in Trinity College in Dublin. And I got to the end of that, and I suppose I was at that crossroads of, right, well, what now? Still love music, still see myself within the music field, but where do I go from here? And actually, I kind of took a U-turn in a little bit of a way, and I went and pursued primary school teaching. So I did a master's in primary education, and I worked in that for 6 years. And I think through that, I was always probably drawn to the caring professions as well. So music with caring profession, and here in Ireland, music therapy wasn't widely known in that time. I'm making myself sound very old. I'm not that old, but it was. I think the course started here in Ireland in 2000. The music therapy course. There is only one in the University of Limerick, and that started in 2000. So I was coming out of my degree only a few years later, 2007. So it just wasn't really heard of, I guess. But throughout my primary school teaching years, I spent 6 years working in a mixture of special educational settings and mainstream settings. And through that, I suppose how I used music in the classroom was a real, you know, it was just, it was part of everything, part of the learning, part of regulation, part of behavior strategies. It was just so ingrained within everything we did within the classroom. And I suppose that led me to explore music therapy. And that's I suppose in a nutshell where it was just the perfect combination as well of combining music with the caring profession.
Yes.
So that's when I took a career break then from my job and went and did the masters in the University of Limerick. So
Oh,
very glad that I
amazing.
did.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Do you feel like your experiences, your previous experiences, kind of exploring performance and then teaching, do you think that shaped the therapist you are today at all?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think particularly with the teaching, you know, I suppose, like I said, the way I used music in the classroom anyway was quite congruent, I guess, to how I would probably use it in a group setting now in music therapy. But also, I guess I was a little bit more focused on the well-being of the students, as opposed to the curriculum. I probably did prioritize, let's actually have a nice time. Let's all feel safe and well here, as opposed to we need to get X, Y, and Z done as part of the curriculum. So
Yeah.
whether that's a good or a bad thing in a classroom scenario, I don't know. But I think that definitely has shaped my work as a therapist, and particularly with young people, with adults as well, though, just that individuality of it. Everybody is so different, and whether or not they have a diagnosis, whether that be in a classroom with dyslexia or in a music therapy session with autism, it just doesn't matter. That's a label that gives a group of common symptoms or commonalities amongst people. But at the end of the day, they're all people, they're all individuals with their own personalities and that kind of thing. So I think definitely my work as a teacher there has impacted how I work now.
Yeah, that's really
Mm.
interesting. Thank you. I'm just thinking about our next few questions, and I know the audience might not know this about you, but after you did your music therapy training, you went and completed your PhD, which is super interesting. And now you have your own private practice. So I want to talk about both of those things, but I
Yeah,
wondered if you could tell us a little bit about your PhD research.
absolutely. Yeah. So I suppose throughout my training, my two of my three placements were in neuro rehab. Obviously, one in Putney with
Yay!
yourself, and then when I came back from Putney, I was in the National Rehabilitation Hospital here in Dublin, and I spent a year there. So I had really, I suppose, yeah, just I loved that environment, that neuro rehabilitation work, and how music just massively, in a measurable way, benefited the patients, the clients. So I suppose I was from the get go within my MA training was drawn to neuro rehab, and then I suppose me personally, for me, there's always been such a inextricable link between music and movement. For me, whether it's making me go out and run or go to the gym or just that motivational push, I guess, to make me do that little bit more. um and for me, I suppose there's a mood element as well. And when I started exploring this as a piece of research, I wanted to combine all three of those. So can music impact the movement aspect? Can it affect the mood aspect in a positive way for individuals in particular who had an acquired brain injury? So that was the, I suppose, seed of the PhD. And going from there, then we decided. So again, I was based in the University of Limerick, and the clinical aspect took place at the National Rehabilitation Hospital again in Dublin. And it was amazing, like this, just that collaborative work. Because obviously even the setting up of the study, there was such collaboration with occupational therapy and physiotherapy, in particular, and psychology, of course, as well. And that was just really exciting to get all of their expertise and their involvement with it. And so really what it ended up being was exploring NMT techniques, so the three sensory motor techniques combined, so rhythmic auditory stimulation, pattern sensory enhancement, and TIMP, therapeutic instrumental music performance, on the mobility of adults and children who had an acquired brain injury, but simultaneously to assess if there were any secondary benefits, particularly in relation to mood.
Okay.
So I suppose, yeah, most of the patients were in for a 12-week intensive rehabilitation kind of period. So we worked over an 8-week period. So they started with a baseline phase where they didn't have music therapy, moving into 3 times a week music therapy. So we had three hour long sessions a week, where we were combining all three of those techniques. But including everyone's and incorporating each person's preferred music. So that was a massive part of it, you know, just really that motivational piece, that endurance piece, that it was the music was chosen specifically, not only in terms of their mobility and their tempo, but also their preference. And the findings of that were amazing. They were so exciting. So we got significant. Yeah, so we were measuring very carefully the quantitative aspect, obviously, and there was statistical significance, so statistical improvements in relation to their gait, so their cadence, their velocity, their stride length. So when we were looking at the spatial temporal parameters of gait, they had significantly increased. And what was really interesting actually as well was that not only over the 8-week period was it statistically significantly improved, but also from pre-session to post-session. And that was, you know, because at the beginning of a session, we would do a timed 10-meter walk test. We would do the exact same thing at the very end of a session. And the difference was staggering, from pre to post. We'd also video record each of the sessions and each of those 10-meter walk tests. And, you know, what we did then, the qualitative aspect of the study was comparing both alongside with two clinical specialists in physiotherapy in acquired brain injury. We sat down and we observed the pre and the post, and just to see those side by side, where a person was in week 1 versus week 8, it was quite extraordinary to actually play them side by side, and really, I suppose, yeah, really amazing exercise to do actually. And to get them involved as well, and to see that improvement, because often I think it's hard for you yourself when it's you engaging in the rehab and you have so many sessions and it seems so never ending and long, but for them to actually be able to see that improvement and see the numbers and see the figures, that was really an amazing experience for me as well as for them. And in relation to mood, I think we never expected over an 8-week period. We were using the hospital anxiety depression scale as a quantitative measure of whether there would be any change in obviously anxiety and depression. So we were very close to significance in relation to anxiety, and depression not as much. But again, over an 8-week period, we didn't really expect to see. It was more just to have a quantitative, you know, kind of, could this be something? I think if it was over a longer period, we may have seen, you know, bigger results, or a more kind of significant result. But what was really interesting was a questionnaire at the end where participants filled out a qualitative for them, what it meant for them, and how it impacted their health and their well-being and their mood as well as their movement. And within that, it was quite overwhelming how many reported that motivation piece, that endurance. They were just able to go for longer. And some of those sessions were collaborative with physiotherapists. So it gave physiotherapists a little bit more scope to get a little bit more work done with their clients. So it was kind of a win-win situation there.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. If part of our community wants to read about your PhD research, is it available online anywhere?
It is actually, yes. And I wonder, could I send you the link maybe? Or
Yeah. Send me the link and then I can include it at the bottom of this video.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's available there to read. Yeah.
Awesome. That's so exciting. It sounds really interesting. I'm excited to read it.
And hoping for a few publications over the coming months as well. So
yeah,
we're hoping to hear back from a number of those. So yeah, fingers crossed.
And I guess this leads into, I want to talk about Neurolinks, your private practice, because it's such great work you're doing, and it's related to your use of NMT and kind of that path. But maybe you could tell us about Neurolinks and how it started and what your mission is.
Yeah. So Neurolinks, yes, we set up, when did we officially opened with the branded Neurolinks last January. So just January
Yes.
gone.
Yeah.
So eight months ago. What month? I'm losing track of months.
I'm with you.
With lockdowns and everything, it's hard to keep track. So yeah, we opened in January, and so basically, I suppose who we work with adults and children living with neurological conditions. So I suppose to date, it's been quite a wide range of conditions that people have come with anything from stroke or acquired brain injury to cerebral palsy, people with autism, Huntington's, Parkinson's. So it's quite a wide variety, multiple sclerosis, of conditions amongst our clients. So we have a clinic based in Dublin. So most of the work happens there, or I do a limited amount of outreach as well, in kind of case by case basis where somebody mightn't have the capacity to make it to the clinic. So we go to them in the hospital or nursing home or wherever it is that they are. So we have a few clients who we go out to. And yeah, I guess it was a very natural progression from the masters actually, and that kind of interest in neuro rehab generally, then to doing the PhD,
Yeah.
and I suppose now implementing all of that into my private practice and into the work that I do. So, like you say, it's very much based on the NMT kind of measurability and pre-post, people coming looking to improve their speech and language, people coming to look improve their mobility and movement or cognition. But I suppose coupled with that as well, you've got the humanistic side of things as well, because obviously the NMT techniques are rooted in neuroscience. But I suppose for me, how I would describe it is, yes, very much, implementing the step-by-step protocols of NMT, but also I suppose the way of being in a session is quite humanistic and meeting the person where they're at, and it's very much individualized and person-centered at the same time.
Mm.
So that's a really important aspect, I think, as well, and that was part of the PhD study as well, exploring that kind of lens, I guess, with how you approach sessions. So yeah, bringing that into the practice, and
Yeah.
yeah, like I say, it's been an amazing experience, amazing few months. Obviously, a few hurdles along the way with COVID, but for the most part, it's been an incredible learning curve as well. It's such a different aspect as well when you're in private practice as opposed to working in a hospital and that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's been really interesting.
I can imagine. Can you describe to us briefly
Yeah.
what a typical work week looks like for Neurolinks and
Yeah.
yourself?
Absolutely, yeah. So my week begins. So yeah, it's quite a nice balance actually. And the week begins, and I work in a rehabilitation hospital here in Dublin for Monday and Tuesday. So that's quite full on, working as part of the interdisciplinary team. And again, that's very much implementing the findings of the PhD and using NMT techniques for communication, for movement, alongside speech and language therapists, physiotherapists, occupational therapists. So that's really nice on a Monday, Tuesday to have. There are two other music therapists there as well, so we have a nice team, and that collaboration is just key, I think, to so much neuro rehab work. So that's a Monday and a Tuesday. And then on a Wednesday, I do some outreach work where at the moment, I go to two nursing homes, I go to an acute hospital, and I have some online work as well. And then on a Thursday and Friday, I am based fully in my clinic then in Sandyford in Dublin. And that's a mixture of one-on-one and group work, which we haven't been able to do just yet with COVID, but hopefully
Yes.
that will come soon.
Yeah, fingers
Yeah.
crossed.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. That's really helpful. I also wondered, because I think part of our community will be either starting or thinking about starting their own private practice. Do you have
Mm,
any like top three takeaway tips for those young professionals who are starting?
yeah. I like, first of all, enjoy it. It's a
Yes.
really challenging time.
Yeah.
I don't know, I think for me anyway, it feels quite overwhelming because you've trained in music therapy. You haven't trained in business or in all of the other things that go along with setting up your own practice. And regardless of type of practice, it's all of those things like your marketing, your social media, your bookkeeping. So I suppose enjoy the uncertainty, but also I think reach out for help and ask for help in that. I don't know. I suppose it was something I learned quite early on. Have a mentor, have somebody who you can go to bounce off ideas. Like obviously with our clinical work, we are regularly going to supervision. So kind of like supervision for your business and for building up your practice. I think that's key as well. And just I think in the long term it might be an investment, but I think it's a good investment. Um Another tip would be that collaboration. I think I'm always trying to fly the flag for collaborating with anybody, for anybody who's willing to collaborate, whether that be another therapist, whether it's a physical therapist, whether it's a speech and language therapist, or maybe another creative arts therapist. Um, so I think that's hugely helpful as well, and it goes back to what I said a minute ago about having a team as well and having that support. I guess that collaborative piece. But I think also to serve the clients who you're working with, I think it can
Mm.
be so massively beneficial as well to have that interdisciplinary input. Um, and there was one more that um, I suppose self care, because I think it can be so overwhelming, like I say, and it's constant. You feel like you should be working all the time, and I think this is part and parcel of being self-employed. So I don't think it matters what industry you're in, but I think hugely for me anyway, that kind of guilt of taking a day off or having a weekend free, and not working on the business or on the clinical aspect or whatever it may be. So that self-care and having that as part of your routine, I think is really important. And there's always there's a quote that I've read somewhere, and it's stress plus rest equals growth. And it's something that I kind of live by. And I think no matter what it is, if it's in the gym, if it's your business, yes, you'll have stress, but to balance that, you need your rest as well. And that's when exciting things will happen. And that's when, you know, you will grow
Yeah.
and improve everything. Mm,
That's so important, taking care of ourselves and like our own mental health as well as therapists, um, to care for
absolutely.
others. Yeah. There was a
Yeah.
question I
Yeah.
wanted to ask on. Oh yes, You spoke about collaborating with others, and I love the
Mm.
story about how you found your private practice clinic. And I wondered if it'd be possible for you to just share a little bit about that. Um,
Absolutely, yeah. So I suppose it was a little bit. So for anyone who doesn't know Dublin, it's quite a small city. So I suppose I had kind of targeted the area where I knew I wanted the clinic to be based. And from there, I suppose I just reached out. I was a little bit cheeky, I guess, and reached out to a lot of different clinics around the area I wanted to be based, and just explained a little bit about what I did and my research and what it was I was hoping to build and about Neurolinks and I suppose the mission behind it and the vision I had for it. So I, yeah, got in touch with several, probably about 6 or 7 different clinics in that area where they had physiotherapy, they had occupational therapy, they had speech and language therapy. So they had a bit of a team already. They may not all have had each of those, but they had other disciplines there already. So reaching out to them and just, I suppose, yeah, explaining what I did, and if they would have any interest to partner up, and for me maybe to sublet a space from them or join the team as Neurolinks. And from there, I was so unbelievably lucky to arrive in Sandyford, where I'm currently based, and it's called the Adult and Child Therapy Clinic. So there they have psychologists, they have speech and language therapists, they have occupational therapy, so they have a full-on interdisciplinary team. So they're all upstairs, and the days I'm there, I'm downstairs, and it's been incredible to, for today, for example, we co-ran a group. So we had a group of preschool aged children who are getting ready to attend school. Last week we had pre-teenagers, so 11, 12-year-olds, so they're about to start high school here in Ireland. And the week before, we had a younger cohort again who are starting preschool. So we had a kind of a 3-day group where they could, I suppose, get into the swing of things and just talk about how that transition will be for them. And that was amazing. So that's just an example, I suppose, of how sourcing the space where I work out of, but also coming together and collaborating wherever possible to yeah. It's just, I suppose, there's such learning in it for me as well as a music therapist, because you always, I think, take something from working with another therapist, always.
Yes, yeah. I'm really big on collaborative work as well. But I love that story of how you were exploring and you found your clinic, and actually kind of how it has a life of its own now, and yeah, it's just really exciting to hear about.
Yeah.
I think it will inspire a lot of the MTAcademy community, as it does myself.
I hope so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think.
And that's it. As challenging as it is, it's exciting, and that's why I
Yeah,
stick with it. Keep
yeah,
going, just
yeah,
keep going. There will be
definitely.
challenges, but it's worth it, and it is exciting.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Shane, for your time and for your wisdom.
Thank you for having me.
I look forward to sharing
Thank
this,
you.
and I'm sure we'll hear from you again soon. If
I
anyone
hope so.
wants to
Yeah.
follow Neurolinks, are you on Instagram?
I am. Yes. It's
Yes.
Neurolinks_IE. Yeah.
Perfect. We'll get there. Thanks, Shane. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.